Spooner's juggling that ball still cracks me up.
It's the best.
That's the first time I've seen Spoonley catch a ball.
Well, yeah, it was kind of half dropping it, I think. It's the same thing. Welcome into this week's episode of the Full 90 podcast. As usual, I am joined here on all the buttons and gadgets by Mark Peard. Big news out of Wellington at the moment has been the termination or mutual consent termination of Stephen Taylor's contract. We will talk to Jason Pine later on about that. But more on to Spooner's sending off or replacement. We've got a loan agreement to get Ricardo Ball in here. We did try and get Stephen Taylor's jet ski, which is now redundant, but I think that's a little bit too plastic like Spooner's, so we'll go with someone a bit more lively and Ricardo. So welcome in.
Hey, thanks, Heidi. How are you, mate? All right?
Very good. Now, obviously, you're a bit of an expert on the Premier League. You got your own kind of gig going on with that, and you've been doing some odds.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. We had a great opening weekend.
We did actually have a pretty good opening weekend. So I've got a podcast I've been doing for a while called World of Football with a BT Sport commentator, a guy called Adam Summerton, and I thought I'd supplement that with my own, stream of consciousness thoughts on a Patreon account called Heavy Metal Football. So you get my thoughts on heavy metal. Some, you should check out this album, that album, and also football as well. So kind of my two big passions in life. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
I'm more the glam metal. Yeah, I'm the Motley Crue and kind of Poison type of.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lower down on the list there.
Something I'm surprised hasn't been done before: the mesh of football and heavy metal. Do you know what I mean? It hasn't been done well. I think there's a mark there, mate.
German Bundesliga club like St. Pauli or something would have that all over. Yeah.
Don't show off your ability to be able to name.
Hey, I can
European
pronounce that one.
teams.
That's going to be a big test here. Why don't we test you now? Should we
hit the headlines?
Yeah, let's hit the headlines. Mark Peard, let's see how he butchers these ones.
Right, here we go. Okay, new signings once again. Another young Kiwi has been signed by a European club, with Ollie White signing for Turkish side Istanbulspor.
Hey, that's good.
Is that good enough? Good. On a 5-year deal, so good on him. In Europe, Michael Vold keeps a clean sheet in Almere City's 3-0 win over RFC Os as his team climbs to second place in...
I think that was the Dutch second league.
The Dutch second league.
You forgot to type that in, didn't you?
Yeah, you forgot. I don't know. It's obviously disappeared somewhere. New signing once again. Another young Kiwi has been signed by the same one. Why is it going round and round in circles?
Just this is. I have to take this back off you. This is 2 weeks in a row we've just had.
How did that work?
Just a point here. Ollie White, given the name of our Olympic team, surely he's a shoo-in for the Ollie Whites, isn't he?
On that though, seriously, 5-year deal is massive, isn't it?
It's huge.
Any young player would be signing a 1-year deal, possibly a 2-year deal at most. 5-year deal in Turkey, I just hope he's getting paid. But otherwise, that's a big investment. Now, we'll go back to your podcast. Who's going to win the Premier League?
Manchester City.
Really?
Yeah.
With no real kind of fanfare about their squad overhaul, nothing. They're just going to be better this year.
Yeah, I think they'll be better this year. I mean, they've brought in Ferran from Valencia, who's basically the top player in the Spanish under-21 setup. So they have brought him in, which I think will give them a little bit. They've brought Nathan Ake in, which gives them a bit more depth at the back. I think before the window closes, they will sign another centre-back as well. And I just look at their squad, and they've got, outside of maybe left-back, I think they've got really 2 fantastic players for every position. I think they've got a depth that Liverpool don't have. And the thing that worries me about Liverpool is the way that Klopp sets his teams up, the way they play, the way they press. It's high intensity. We saw it with Dortmund in Germany. They burned out after 3 years, right? And you kind of think, well, people say, well, they've only won 1 year. But really, I mean, they were within a point of winning the year before that. And it would have been a record point total if they'd done it. So I think they're at that point, and they've signed no one. Like, they've signed absolutely no one. Maybe a backup left back, I think, to Andy Robertson. And they feel like, I mean, if any of their front three get injured, do you really rate who they've got on the bench? If Virgil van Dijk gets injured, they've let Dejan Lovren go. They don't have any depth at centre-back either.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And obviously their first game this weekend, 4-3 win over Leeds.
Yeah.
Who's going to be more concerned on that? I mean, obviously Liverpool get the 3 points. They score 4 goals at home. Leeds are probably raving, going, hey, look, we pushed the champions or defending champions really close. But unfortunately for any of those promoted teams, if you concede 4 goals, it's never a good look either.
No, it's not. I mean, you go back to last year. Remember the first game of last year, Liverpool at Anfield against Norwich, promoted team. And everybody raved about what great football Norwich played. I think they lost 4-1 in the end. But they did play some good football, and they looked good. And then they went on and did absolutely nothing. And then ended up going out with a whimper. I don't think Leeds will do that. I think Leeds are a better team. I think the manager they've got, Bielsa, is a very clever manager as well. I mean, he's the guy that Pep basically learned off. So he's got to have something about him. I think that Leeds will be happy with what they saw. I mean, I thought that the young winger that they've got on loan from Man City, who was down the left, he dribbled past Trent Alexander-Arnold 3 times in that match. Last season, Trent Alexander-Arnold got dribbled past 4 times all season.
Yeah.
So I think that there is some scope there if you're a Leeds fan to look at that and go, well, sure, we conceded 4 goals. 2 were pens. It wasn't at the home of the champions. That's not too bad. And I've got to say, too, I don't know what you thought, but the first pen was never a pen. I mean, I know it hit the guy's arm.
You sound like Spoonley.
It hits the guy's arm, but the rule is, the law is, as I understand it, unless they've changed it again, is that if the ball deflects off another part of your body and hits you in the arm, it's not a penalty. It deflected off his thigh, VAR, what do they do? Sod all.
Don't get me started with VAR, as usual.
Yeah.
Hey, look, you mentioned before Leeds will be okay. Who gets relegated then? Who are the 3 teams that drop out the bottom here?
Oh, Fulham, I think. They just don't. Scotty Parker's kind of got that midfield looking a little bit better, but they're just a soft underbelly. Tim Ream is their starting centre back is not the quality that they need for the Premier League. They've brought in a couple of fullbacks now who'll be interesting, including I think it's Tete, who's a Dutch international they brought from Lyon, a right back. So that might help them a little bit, but just after what I saw, I don't see enough goals in them, and I think they will once again concede too many. I see them going down. I think West Brom will go down as well. I think they will be a team that nobody really likes playing because it'll always be a fight, but I don't think they've got enough quality about them.
Yep.
And the third one that I think is in danger of going down, and this is what I put in my picks to put up there to nail your balls to the wall and go, this is what I think is going to happen, is West Ham.
I was glad you mentioned that because I put it in my notes here. They're in serious shit, aren't they?
Yeah.
Seriously, for what is an established, you can hardly say they're a big club, but they're a well-known club. They're fan base in London, the fan base all over the world, but they've just been losing stack loads of game. They lost one of their best juniors recently with no reason why. There doesn't seem to be any plan around what they're doing. No great signings. They're a shambles.
They are a shambles. Dean Garner is the guy you're talking about, and they've sold him to West Brom. He was there last season on loan. I think he scored 16 and 9 assists or something. He did pretty well. And Moyes didn't want him to go. It wasn't a Moyes decision. And then Mark Noble, the club captain, comes out and slates the club on Twitter for doing it, and Moyes backs him up. So, there's a disconnect between the owners and the guys on the ground. So I think that they're going to be in trouble. There's talk that they have to sell if they want to buy. They've sold him. There's nothing on the horizon. Looks like they're going to buy anybody. They've been trying to get James Tarkowski out of Burnley. They've offered 30 million. Burnley have said, go away, we want 50. And, the thing that's now coming out is, well, who's their only saleable asset, really, is Declan Rice. I mean, if you're the owners of West Ham, are you going to risk selling the only guy that's really international quality out of your squad to try and fund, 3 or 4 lesser players?
Yeah, now, obviously, you picked Man City to win, but this year is going to be a lot closer, isn't it? I mean, I look at the squads. You've got Arsenal, who have really developed well under Arteta, a number of new signings there. They've kept the main strikers, which was probably the biggest thing for them. Chelsea have signed a bucket load of players to add to what was a good season last year. You've got Liverpool defending champions. You've got Man City, who you mentioned. Everton have started with a hiss and a roar with 2 massive signings. Wolves have been quality for a number of years in that kind of top 6 area, and without having to do Europa League, they'll have fresh legs, whereas the other teams won't. Leicester's always there or thereabouts. Newcastle's the revival. Burnley's a shit team to play, but they always get their elbows up. Good old Chris Wood. Are United the real deal this year? I
think United will go close. For me, I've got United third, which is where they were this season, just finished. But I think, third at 66 points was a reflection on how bad the rest of the league was, really, how bad the rest of those teams were. So I think they'll get third, but they'll be a lot closer to Liverpool and to Manchester City.
And how many times are they going to wear that awful third kit?
Oh, mate, honestly.
Get it on. It's a hidden gem. I tell you, that's the one that all the collectors will be wanting to keep.
Actually, you know what it reminded me of, Peter?
The Warriors.
No.
Okay.
I'm winding the clock way back here.
Okay.
Mutombo, when he signed for Adidas.
Oh, yes.
They put out a Mutombo kit, and it was all the
yeah.
zebra stripes as well.
Which was, I don't know how that one sold, so I can't give you on anything. How was the opening round? How was the opening round of the EPL? Was there fanfare? Was it good football? How did it go down?
It was good football, and it always is because it's in the summer months, and the fields look fantastic with the pitches that they now have and all that. But to be honest, behind closed doors and stuff like that, it's just not the same.
Yeah, totally. We're getting used to it though. I was thinking with the NFL that's just started up as well. I was like, I'm actually now finding myself used to the fact that these are going to be played in front of nobody or just real select crowds. I'm kind of used to it. So when the shit does start, kicking on again, it's going to be awesome. Like it's going to be so much fun.
Well, imagine going to a game. That's
you're being silly now.
I know.
There's no such thing.
Imagine getting in a crowd and getting sweaty and having a few beers and yelling
right.
abuse at referees and stuff. I mean, it's well, I don't know. But you mentioned before Declan Rice. They're talking about £50 million. How weird is it these days when you're talking about players being sold for £50 million? Or I'm doing a big watch at the moment on Neon with Ballers in the Rock.
Yes.
I want a 3-year deal at $9 million a year. And I'm thinking, the money is just nuts.
Still going. Some people are still getting paid to do their work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not all of us, but some of us. Yeah.
No.
Well, that was the thing about the Messi contract too. I mean, I knew Messi would be well paid, but I didn't know how well paid he was until those stories came out. He's earning something like, I think it's £970,000 a week.
See, that's where I like that when they break them right down, and it's like scratching his ass every 30 seconds, like he earns this amount of money.
He's on £137,000 a day.
Yeah,
I love that though. I'm not at any stage the way ever get dark that I'm like, why don't I get paid that shit? I don't deserve that. Like, I'm never going to make that. So I'm happy for these people, but it always amuses me that every time he takes a breath, he makes $7 or something like that. You bring it right down to.
I'm like, how the hell do they spend it? Like, seriously.
Oh, totally.
Do they just have to spend their whole time just flowing notes out?
Imagine having that goal though. Imagine being on £50,000 or whatever, £50 million. Imagine having the goal that I want to keep my bank balance at zero. Every single day it needs to be at zero. So I'm going to spend as much as I possibly can and have a plan to spend every single dollar you get.
But the inflation rate is massive. Like, it would only be about 4 or 5 years ago, £100,000 a week was what the top players are earning. We're already at the £300,000.
Really?
Like in just that short space of time.
300,000 a week.
That's pounds. So double that for Kiwi money. 600,000.
600. What? 600. Just for a moment, sit there where you're listening to this, our Kiwi friends, and think, what would you do with $600,000 a week?
Well, the poor guy from Watercare had to do a whole year's work to
get that.
Balls up the dams just to get that a year.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, it's like even Winston Reid, who's on loan over in the MLS at the moment. His contract with West Ham United was £60,000 a week.
Wow, so 120k a week.
Yep. Yeah.
Hey, just on that, do the players in the NFL have their contracts come up on that website? Because I know with the MLS,
they're all public.
Like in America, they're great. It's public.
Huge, hugely public, and therefore, I'm torn both ways with this. Like, I think there are responsible people in this world who don't look at these contracts jealously and go, "Oh, get off your right! No, you're not worth that amount." They're like me. I like to think of myself as a responsible person, a fan of sport who looks at contracts and goes, "Good for you.
Yeah.
Go get that. Like, that's awesome." But there are a lot of people, and I know when they're trying to talk about making the NRL contracts a lot more transparent, so whether people are getting
paper bag isn't just arriving.
But I mean, there's two types of fans, right? There's the jealous one that says, well, they're not worth that, and they get all shitty and they attack them on Twitter or social media or yell at them in the games. Or there's the other ones who are just like, oh well, good on you, man. You got your payday when you could.
Yeah, I always think about it as if they're being paid that, nobody's holding a gun to the club's head.
No, exactly.
The club's obviously making enough money to be able to do it. I remember when Beckham went to Real Madrid, and he was getting paid, I think, $30 million a year then. Which was big money at the time. And in the first day that Real Madrid were allowed to sell Beckham shirts, they made something like $26 million.
Oh, I remember that. I was going through New York at the time, and I saw one of his shirts in a shop in New York, which was strange, Real Madrid ones. Had to buy it. It's like it was a freaking.
It was the same. Yeah,
it's like you're saying. It was an iconic shirt. That 23 Beckham. It was
LeBron James, Lakers, 23. Yeah, exactly the same. That these players are worth their weight in gold when it comes to selling the merch, right?
Exactly.
So
it was interesting going back to that website because when Stephen Taylor and I realised that the Phoenix were self-destructing, and well, not self-destructing, but the squad is starting to get threadbare. I was like, flip it, I wonder how much those guys in the MLS are actually earning, whether we can entice any of them back. And it's actually quite a good thing. You can use it and say, oh, Mark over there, he's not earning that much money in the MLS. Maybe we could get him back to the Phoenix. So who knows?
Totally, there'd be plenty of paired shirts sold for the Phoenix if I came back.
nearly the NBL draft could have had a whole stack load of them.
It's not a bad idea.
We could have been decked out here in the podcast with our Mark Peard shirts on.
Yeah.
The embarrassing thing is I actually do have a Phoenix top with Peard on the back of it.
Do you?
Yeah. when I say embarrassing, it's because I don't fit it anymore, and I've tried to get into it, and it was...
What does actually make us only 3 games less than Spoonley for playing for the Phoenix, so there we go.
There we go, exactly. We're close. We are close. Speaking of Phoenix, did we want to, do you want to chop down to Jason Pine and have a chat, and then we can come back and finish up any EPL chat?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, with big news out of Wellington this week was the... I guess it's almost like a resignation, wouldn't you say? Stephen Taylor has had to come to the conclusion that his future is no longer safe in Wellington and is headed off to greener pastures. Made the phone call through to Tele, the coach, and explained his situation. But we'll shoot down to Piney and get the ins and outs of exactly why that happened. Evening, Piney. How you going?
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. Good to be on the pod.
Hey, big news out of Wellington this week. Stephen Taylor has left the club by mutual consent. That has got to be a massive shock and sent big ripples through, I guess, the squad.
Yeah, look, if there's a guy you didn't want to lose, or if you rank the players, I guess, from the one that you would least like to lose all the way down to, I guess, guys who you'd be not happy to see go, but who you wouldn't be that upset about. Look, Taylor's near the top. Captain of the club, the driving force of the team since Jura left at the back end of last season, played every game, supremely fit. But more than that, just the influence he had in that changing room and within that playing group was just one of those intangibles that you sometimes get lucky with players at football clubs, as you guys know. And he was that. He was the driving force behind that team through all of their ups and downs across the very unusual A-League season that we've had. So for him to leave with 2 years still left on his contract, a massive blow. Really, really hard to even describe what a blow this is to have the skipper leave at this point in proceedings.
Yeah, and I guess it is COVID related, but also it's A-League related. There are massive problems with the A-League at the moment, with the players' salaries being disputed all over the show. The A-League clubs are a little bit over the show with their different approaches to what's going on, and you can understand how a 34-year-old would want some certainty about what's going on. We don't know when the start of the A-League is. We don't know what the salary cap is going to be or the restrictions on players, and we don't even know if the Phoenix is going to be based in Australia. So for a guy who's 34, you can understand why there might be greener pastures somewhere else.
Yeah, I think you've just laid it out. I think you've laid out his thinking perfectly. That's exactly what he would have gone through. I mean, loyalty is one thing, and Stephen Taylor loved the Phoenix and loved Wellington and loved being here in normal times. That's why he signed a 2-year contract extension on New Year's Day. He was ready to stay here for the next 2 years and beyond and look to finish his career here. And who knows, maybe even become a permanent resident one day. But all that uncertainty, as you say, Heidi, well, first of all, as you say, we don't know when the league's going to start. There's no start date. We don't know whether the Phoenix are going to be based in Wellington for some or none of that season. And the breakdown in the collective bargaining discussions are probably the biggest red flag of all, to be honest, because, there was just absolutely no certainty there. And for a guy, as you say, who's getting towards the end of his career, but still has plenty to give and a couple of good years left in him, he saw a deal elsewhere, and there will be a deal elsewhere for Stephen Taylor that had certainty wrapped around it. And all he had here in Wellington at the Phoenix was uncertainty at the moment. So you certainly cannot blame him for looking at that uncertainty and looking for security in what is a very uncertain world for sports people and for all of us at the moment. So, look, I don't think there's anything here that can be ascribed to Stephen Taylor as far as a selfish decision or in any way a disloyal decision. I think he's made the only decision he could make under the circumstances.
Piney, this is shit, and this is from someone who's not even a massive Phoenix fan. But this is shit. How does the A-League compensate the Phoenix for the shit?
Wow, that one's coming hot, hasn't it?
Sorry,
it must be the
that just
whiskey.
annoyed me. That was
I think
the
it's
whiskey.
the whiskey.
Yes.
Yeah. Look. I mean, you're right, Mark. It's less than ideal. Absolutely, it is. But the clubs, all of the clubs, are going through the pain at the moment of trying to reach agreement with the clubs and the club owners. And just to give you a bit of a timeline here, a very brief one. The reason that the collective bargaining agreement, the agreement between the players and their club owners is being renegotiated is because during COVID, the Fox broadcast deal was slashed markedly. Therefore, less money coming to the clubs, less money being able to be paid to the players. So the owners are going to the players basically and saying, we can't afford to pay you what we have before. So, here's how we envisage things playing out. And what they've placed in front of the players is an agreement which is really, not what the players will be anywhere near ready to accept. And that is that on a player-by-player and club-by-club basis, the owners wanted to be able to talk to those guys one-on-one and tell them whether they were going to lose anywhere up to 30% of their pay. Just a unilateral decision between owner and player. And if the player was unwilling to reach agreement with the owner, then after 7 days, his contract could be terminated. I mean, that's no way to run a football competition. You can't have unilateral, pay discussions going on with players. What the players want is some sort of security and certainty moving forward. And the other layer of this is that when you look at the sacrifices that all of these players made, and in particular the Wellington Phoenix players, living away from home for so long, all of that uncertainty, quarantining on both sides of the Tasman, all of that stuff, I believe there has been a real lack of recognition for not only what the Phoenix players have done, but all of the players in the A-League have done to get the most recent season finished and with a mood to try and get the next one underway to the benefit of themselves and, of course, the clubs as well. So, look, it's a really sticky situation, and the latest I'm hearing is that it's nowhere close to being resolved.
Piney, Ricardo here, mate. The hot question, the one that everyone wants an answer to, though, is with Stephen Taylor gone, who's going to go and stand nose-to-nose with goalkeepers at free kicks and be a right pain in the arse for us? Who's the biggest wind-up merchant in the squad now that he's gone?
Well, I think something like that has to be handed to a guy with a bit of cheek about him, a little bit of attitude. Maybe it's a Cameron Devlin type arrangement.
He wouldn't be able to stand the same eye level as a goalkeeper, though, would he?
Yeah, that is a problem.
He wouldn't provide the same level of obstruction that Stephen Taylor did. Look, I think the word they use for it in football is shithousery, and he was a master at it, Stephen Taylor. But he was so likable with it, and so so
he's always smiling, wasn't he? Always smiling.
Yeah, always smiling, and that's why he was so popular with everybody down this end of the world, and even the other A-League teams enjoyed the opportunity to play against a guy who had massive Premier League experience. So, look, it's as I said at the start, if you lined up the players who you were just desperate not to lose, he'd be up there. Ulises Davila would be up there, and now there has to be doubt over his contract as well. He's in exactly the same situation as Stephen Taylor. He's got 1 more year left on his contract, but he knows that he's going to have to take a pay cut of anywhere up to 30%. Look, I don't care what you earn. If 30% of your pay is taken away, then that is a significant consideration for you to, whether you come back or not. So, look, I mean, we know Gary Hooper's gone, Stephen Taylor's gone. We know a couple of the best young Kiwis and Kakachi and McLeod have gone. Look, if they were to lose too many more, then Ufuk Talay is faced with his second major rebuild in as many seasons, and with a reduced salary cap probably to try and attract players. So
you've actually hit my next point here, Piney.
It's a really bleak outlook at the moment.
Because you're absolutely right. We've lost Kakachi and McLeod, 2 All Whites. We've just lost Taylor and Hooper, who were 2 outstanding imports. There is question marks over Davila's return. Davila's not going to return. He's just had a young child and he's based in Australia and he doesn't actually have a contract. Steinman hasn't signed a new contract. Davila's not likely to return. And, I went on record slating the Phoenix for their lack of preparation this year and was happy to be proved wrong after a number of games and getting to that 3rd place. But you have to look, like you said, we're in that situation. Apart from having a coach, we're in a rebuild again. And unfortunately, who's out in the market? You mentioned before Taylor's missing leaves a big hole. But we've also lost De Vere. So we've got no centre-backs. So if you look at this year's starting back 4 of Kakachi, Taylor, De Vere, Payne, for example, now we've got Payne left. And the only other backup we've got is Tiadafai Hudson-Wehongi, who can play centre-back. And we've got another right back in Callan Elliott, who hasn't actually signed either. That's a struggle. We've got no back 4.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, that it doesn't take much, does it, Heidi, for a very healthy-looking squad to look a little bit unhealthy, And taking Stephen Taylor out is kind of almost the key domino here because, if you had still had Taylor, it probably wouldn't. If you only had Taylor left in the back 4, you'd probably think, well, you know what? They can build a back 4 around him. No disrespect to Tim Payne, but he's only been 1 year as a Phoenix player, and he's a right back and not the kind of magnetic personality that a guy like Stephen Taylor is. At least Ufuk Talay has shown us that he is a master of recruitment, but he was working under very different circumstances a year ago. He had a lot more money to spend. He could go far and wide. There was certainty around what the A-League was going to look like, start dates, finish dates. None of us had even heard of COVID back then. Trying to reconstruct in the post-COVID world is going to be a hang of a lot harder than what he had to do a year ago. So, look, there's a number of scenarios that could play out here. One, which might even have a bit of a silver lining, at least in the short term, is that it might be that a lot of young Kiwis get a chance to play in the A-League when they, in other situations, wouldn't have had that opportunity. So that's one route they could go down, or they could, depending on what happens with the salary cap and how much money there is to spend, they could again go to the international market and try and replace the likes of Taylor, Hooper, Steinman, who I agree probably isn't coming back. David Ball will probably stay, and we hope Davila will come back as well. But there will still be, I think, at least 3 import spots there if they decide that they can attract them and pay them.
So, what about old Kiwis, mate? What about old Kiwis, Piney? How's your boots looking? What are we getting to that stage yet?
How's the over 35s this year?
I'll tell you what, I mean, I think we're scraping the bottom of a very deep barrel if we're getting into that. But yeah, look, and I think just on the Kiwis thing as well, I think that would probably buy the club a little bit of, would carry them a bit of favour with the fans, because, the fans will say, okay, well, we understand you haven't got the big bucks to spend, but at the very least, you're fulfilling another part of the Phoenix's brief, which is that developing and nurturing of young Kiwi footballers.
So if you were Clayton Lewis or Jack Henry Sinclair, you'd be out there busting the pavements at the moment, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, 2 perfect examples. Any Kiwi who's in New Zealand, James McGarry's another one. He hasn't got a club at the moment. He was, last I heard, down in Dunedin and quite keen to look for his next opportunity. With Kakachi gone, James McGarry's got a spot there perhaps at left back. You mentioned Clayton Lewis. He'd easily be able to play in the A-League. Others as well. Maya Bevan, I don't know what he's doing. Would he be an option? Jack Henry Sinclair, certainly, although we seem to be flux with right backs because, of course, Louis Fenton's there as well as Elliott and Payne. But, maybe there's a utility in a Jack Henry Sinclair. Others as well. So, look, the thing at the moment is that this has got steps to go through. The first thing we need to find out is what this collective bargaining agreement is going to look like. How much is there going to be to spend? Will the salary cap come down? It looks like it almost certainly will be reduced. And then what is the club's strategy with that salary cap? Will they splash out on a couple of imports and then use the rest of the money to attract some younger Kiwis to the club? Will they change their strategy in that way? Or will we be operating in a different environment where actually, the salary cap is phased out? I can't see that happening in the short term, but phased out. So all of a sudden it's up to the owners, they can spend whatever they want to spend. So there's so much uncertainty around this league at the moment. But the first thing that has to happen is a collective bargaining agreement has to be committed to by the clubs and by the PFA on behalf of the players. And from that base, then we can move forward and we know what landscape we're operating in.
Now, Piney, it's not just the Phoenix that are affected, though, is it? Because I see Perth Glory have lost a lot of players. Melbourne Victory have lost a lot of players. I mean, this is right across the A-League. So this isn't just something that's affecting the Phoenix.
Absolutely not. No, this is a league-wide thing. And while some teams are confident they can hold on to players, others have been agitating to get away. I think there'll be a lot of players as well who will be burnt quite badly by what happened. When the A-League season resumed, and a lot of them were stood down by their clubs. Let's not forget that during the time when they weren't playing any games, at least the Wellington Phoenix paid their players, as did a couple of other clubs. Some clubs didn't pay their players; they stood them down and their staff. So any goodwill that was there has effectively been evaporated. So there will be a lot of players who are thinking to themselves, you know what, there isn't certainty here. There are opportunities elsewhere. Up in Asia, India seems to have become a popular destination for A-League players. There are other professional leagues in parts of Asia that young Australians and I guess young Kiwis could find themselves in, or further afield and, do what the likes of, Callum McCourt has done and gone to a second-tier club in Denmark where there's an opportunity for him. So, yeah, you're right. All of the clubs will be affected. None of them will have, you wouldn't imagine, the money to spend that they have in the past because of reduced revenues caused by COVID. So who knows what the A-League will look like, when it does get going, and we hope the early part of 2021. One possibility is that the standard might come down because the quality of player just won't be there because the money won't be there to pay them.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much, Piney. It's a great insight from you. You're like the New Zealand Encyclopedia of football down there, and great insight on the A-League. So much appreciate you coming on tonight.
Lads, good to chat. Stay safe.
Cheers, mate. As usual, great insight there from Piney.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah,
I very much thought so.
Good. We're talking about the Premier League before, Ricardo. Question for you.
Yeah.
Who's a better player, Vardy or Drogba?
Ooh, he didn't.
Yeah. I am going to say Vardy.
Well, good call. Very good call. Obviously, he scored a couple of goals opening weekend last week for Leicester. But stats just out. 105 league goals in 212 matches compared to Drogba, who's seen as one of the legends of the Premier League. 104 goals in 254. So 44 games less to score more goals. Jamie Vardy, who was rejected by my old club, Sheffield Wednesday, back in the day. England international goal scorer, Golden Boot last year of the Premier League.
Yeah.
And yet people will look at Drogba as being a legend and Vardy as being a bit part player. It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's part to do with their personas as well. I mean, like Vardy looks like the kind of guy that you would see fronting a Woodstock commercial, doesn't he? I mean, he's kind of got a bit of that about him.
Yeah, I had to say, last year when he scored at Sheffield United and gave it the celebration because he did play at Wednesday to start with, was just legendary. Loved it.
Yeah. No, so and Drogba's got that presence about him too, you know.
Well, he's almost like the Predator, wasn't he? He was just such a beast.
But hey, Heidi, you'd be super proud of me. I have been watching on Amazon Prime the latest football documentary they've got.
The Tottenham one.
Tottenham one, yeah.
Yeah.
I was blind because I've seen a couple of the NFL ones and I saw the All Blacks one, the All or Nothings. I was amazed at how much of an aura that new coach has brought to them.
Mourinho.
He just he doesn't walk, he just levitates into buildings. He just floats, and everyone's like, there he is. And even when he was going around meeting the staff members that work there, they were like, oh. This guy, I've seen him on the news. I've seen some really funny quotes from him. Not 2, 3. I've won so many championships.
I'm the chosen one.
I'm the chosen one. I didn't realize just how, flooring that man's personality is. And the way that he does his halftime speeches and stuff like that, it's blown my mind. It's been a real cool insight. And I love watching it done. It may not be, and they may have Hollywooded how it really is, but I've been enjoying it.
It's funny because I watched the Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix.
Yeah. Seen that too, yeah.
You have. So obviously they drop their bundle and they're getting relegated, and they bring Chris Coleman in, who has the same kind of affection. He's this charismatic guy that just wanders in. Everyone loves him. They're shaking hands, and the ladies are all getting their photos, going, "Oh, he's very attractive," and all that kind of stuff. And then they fucking still lose. It's like, okay, so maybe it's not all the personality.
If only Jose's teams were as attractive to watch as he is, obviously, to look at.
He'd be better off as a mascot, wouldn't he? Just
Gosh, man.
Just the halftime team talk motivator. Just bring him in. Fuck, you're all useless. I'm amazing. If you could just be half as good as me and
be more like me.
He's like the Zlatan Ibrahimovic of managers.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Just on that, obviously, we're talking about under and overrated players. Now, Neymar is a player that really does grind people both ways. I'm not really in the Neymar camp. I don't think he's anywhere near in the same league as the Messis and Ronaldos, and obviously just been sent off in the big brawl in France. But I want to give you a quote here from Joey Barton's a bit of a thug, so it comes with a touch of salt. But Neymar is like the Justin Bieber of football. Brilliant on YouTube, cat piss in reality. Where do you stand on that one, Ricardo?
I'm 100% in the Joey Barton camp. And it's interesting because, there was a recent poll, actually, it was about a year ago, done by ESPN in Brazil about the top Brazilian players. And he didn't make the top 10. Neymar, he's not liked in his homeland, so that I think that tells a lot. That says a lot as well. Yeah, he's not like
because they usually love their own.
Well, for a guy that always claims he's injured during Carnival so he can go back to Brazil for treatment.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing. I mean, that's the cat person reality, isn't it? Can you imagine Joey Barton ever going, I'm going to miss a game? He'd be out there freaking kicking shit at people.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't want to miss games when he'd been red carded, So that's the thing, But on the sending off too, I thought it was, because he's claiming that he was racially abused, and if he was racially abused, then fair play to him. But it's also, given the way he rolls around on the pitch when he's barely being touched, I don't know how much you can actually. I take anything he says with a pinch of salt too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no credibility on that one. Is there?
None whatsoever.
It's like the boy who cried wolf.
That's exactly what I was thinking. My old man brought me that storybook one day.
That's probably our 8-year-old daughter conversation before. We're probably thinking about hey, don't say that story because I'm going to have to tell you about the boy who cried wolf again.
Yeah, but he did that whole. He said in his statement, he said he called me such and such, and made me want to punch him.
Yep.
Before the guy said anything to him, regardless of what it was that he said, Neymar walked up behind him while he was face to face with another PSG player getting in a stoush and slapped him on the back of the head.
Yes,
he does.
Slapping. I mean, really? How
Mate,
does football get any credibility? We go around slapping each other.
This is the thing. There's the whole new generation of kids coming through school at the moment, and if you've got a young lad, you'll know this. As soon as you get a new haircut, the thing to do at school is to get a massive slap. Everyone who sees someone with a brand new haircut, it's a slap on the back of the head, where the part is that's just been faded up. Bang. So slapping, this could be, he might be ahead of his time in terms of slapping come through the future.
Maybe he thought the guy had a haircut and he was just saying, hey, I should get a haircut. Yeah,
potentially.
That's all right. Hey, now look, Ricardo, I understand that on your podcast and that you put through 6 picks for TFB.
Yes.
And you came out with 5 winners.
Yeah, got
so
5 winners
are you able
weekend.
to impart some wisdom on our listeners maybe for this weekend's game? Is there a couple of games that you can maybe give us a heads up on?
Well, it's actually I had there listed the ones that I got right, so I could talk about those. And I haven't looked at anything for this weekend. But,
tell us about the one that got you wrong and whether that was a thorn in the side.
I'll totally throw you under the bus then.
Yeah, no, that's right. Palace Southampton. I had Southampton winning that all day, and I had taken them to win 1-0, 2-0 or 3-0.
Yep.
And that was the one I got wrong.
I can understand that too.
Yeah.
Because Palace were dead set useless last year.
Yeah, exactly. But Liverpool to score a hat-trick. I had that. That was at 385. Arsenal to win by 3 goals was paying 650. I had that as well.
Yep.
And Newcastle to beat West Ham in London, because Newcastle don't have a great record in London, was paying 360, and I was on that too. So
Jeez, what was that paying if you put out a 10-leg multi? Or how many games was it?
it was 6.
6 games, and you dropped 1.
Yeah, I dropped 1. Yeah.
Well, if you'd done the 5, you would have got some serious coin on that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it would have racked up quite
Did
nicely.
you back your own picks, or?
I did, but I didn't multi them. I did them individually, yeah.
Well, you're smart. You're not like me, who goes all or nothing.
Yeah.
Charge!
Well, maybe before we head off out of this podcast, maybe you just want to shout out to the listeners what your site is there again.
Yeah, where can we find your Patreon?
Yeah.
It's called Heavy Metal Football, because I love heavy metal and I love football. So I talk about those two things. And if you're looking for maybe some easy listening for the drive home, then check out, there's a British thrash band called Onslaught, and their new album, Generation Antichrist, is fantastic.
I think we might need some new lead-in music in the future, or maybe some lead-out music.
I've always said that. Where do we find great lead-out music? And
we think we found it.
Can I just say, Ricardo, thank you so much for stepping in at late notice. And without putting too much aside, you've been a lot less harsh than Spoonley has been on anything that we've either of us have done. So it's been very enjoyable. It's been a wonderful Wednesday.
I feel relaxed.
I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel it's like some type of therapeutic. I feel like Piney told us all about the Phoenix and how there could be a possible call up for any one of us at any stage. It's exciting, and we know where to go to get our picks now. We just need to pick which one you're going to get wrong each week so that we know that we can stay out in the clear when we're doing our multis.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. And, I brought some fashion sense to the pod as well after
did.
Spoonley's shocker last week. I'm pretty sure that shirt was modelled after the wallpaper on my grandma's wall in her house in GI.
Totally.
Yeah, you could probably juggle that ball just as well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm to drop less of them through my legs, that's for sure.